going back to kind of when all that was happening, I think another thing is, too, I realized that there were people that had it worse. There were people that were on the streets. There were people, all that stuff. And by no means, I watched my mom's car get repossessed. I watched her get fired from multiple jobs. I saw all of that growing up. But by no means did I ever feel poor. And so when I look at that and I break that down, I think it was just I inadvertently and subconsciously was coming from a space of gratitude. And I think mindset is the first thing you look at. And no matter where you are in life and whether you're going through what I went through or, an abusive thing or whatever the case may be, it's terrible. I don't care how easy or hard it is to somebody else. It's terrible. And there's people that come to me and they would say, and because of my podcast, I get a lot of people that reach out and share their stories with me. And multiple people have reached out and said, because of your show, I decided not to kill myself. And this crazy stuff. But there's also people that reach out and they say, hey, I love what you're doing. And I was like, cool. And I'll even ask them, like, hey, what's your story? And some of them won't share it. And I'll say, why? Is there a reason you don't want to share it? It's okay that you don't want to. I'm just curious. And they go, well, it's nothing compared to yours. But it is, because it's yours. And that's important. But the mindset of this whole entire thing as we go through life and we're experiencing these whatever our rock bottom moments are, we have to realize that life is happening for you, not to you.
Yeah. And you had an episode. Didn't you have an episode with that same title?
Yeah, with Ed Milet.
With Ed Milet.
So that was it's always been my approach to life. At first inadvertently and now very, very on purpose. And I realized, like, as things are happening, I go, okay, what is this doing for me versus what is this doing to me? And it's just getting out of that victim mindset, and just understanding that, like, things happen, right? And I say this all the time, but my favorite quote of all time is, life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you react to what happens to you. Because we have complete control. Believe it or not, we can't control what's happening around us, but we have control over how we react to that. And that's what shapes the future. And part of this journey was 5 months before I launched the podcast. I don't know if I shared this from the stage, so you might not know the whole thing. But 5 months before I launched the podcast, I used to have a co-host. Right. And we were excited about it. It was going to be an entrepreneurial podcast. We were going to talk about business, and we were going to figure out how to build a business. I still had a day job at the time. I was very successful in medical sales. But I just didn't feel fulfilled. And I was like, I just want to do more. I want to be an entrepreneur, whatever that means. I want to make money. And so we were going to launch this show. We were going to interview successful entrepreneurs, learn how to do it ourselves. And we were actually up in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. We decided to take a long weekend and just plan everything out. How are we going to do this? Record the intro to the show, blah, blah, blah. And when I was up there, we were probably there for about 18 hours at the time. I got that phone call nobody ever wants to hear. And so I just lived this lie. And I wasn't myself. And originally I was like, oh, this is a perfect time. I'm changing schools. I can reinvent myself. This is great. It's a great opportunity. But what I didn't realize was there was nothing wrong with me. It wasn't me. It was somebody else that made their choices. And then that shouldn't affect me at all. And so fast forward to when I started to be like, you know what? I'm done lying. I'm done doing this stuff. I was actually dating a girl. And I was 20 at the time, I think. And I was like, first love. I was like, this is the one. This is going to be great. And I was out to dinner with her and her family. And her family goes, so you talk about your mom a lot. What about your dad? And there was like a brief hesitation of what do I say? Because I knew the girl I was dating at the time didn't tell them. Because they're a strong Catholic family. Like, if you're not perfect, you're non-existent.
Wow.
And so I stopped. And I looked at her mom and I said, oh, I don't talk about my dad much because in order for me to see my dad, it's only during visitation hours. It's literally what I said to her.
Did you say it sarcastically or kind of like?
Like, that's exactly how I said it.
Yeah.
It's only during visiting hours. Just like that. And the mom's jaw just kind of dropped. And the girl that I was dating at the time grabbed my leg under the table and squeezed it. And in that moment I went, wow, this relationship just ended. And then I followed up with, but I feel really good.
It felt good to level with somebody.
It felt really good to be like, this is what I go through. This is my life. This is how I cope with it. This is what I'm doing. And when I finally embraced that, that's when everything started to fall into place. That's when I started to find my purpose. That's when I decided, okay, now I need to go down this path. That's when my friendships became super strong. And now that I do that on a larger level, I'm friends with people that I should never be friends with. The reality is Like, I am not a guy that should be hanging out with celebrities and billionaires, but I do. And it's because I approach them in the most authentic way possible. I am myself, and if they like me, great. And if they don't like me, great. It doesn't matter. And I believe you attract the people you're supposed to attract. And so that's really, for me, it's just about being authentic. It's about being unapologetically yourself. And once that happens, the business stuff starts to fall into place. The relationships start to fall into place. And then the important part, you find happiness.
That's right. And I love that message. It's fantastic. And to add one more part to it is you attract who you should. And you even say in previous podcasts, you repel the people that you should.
You know who Hal Elrod is, The Miracle Morning?
Have I heard you talk about it before?
Possibly.
Maybe? Yeah,
so it's a massive book.
Oh, wow.
That it's like the number one most sold self-published book of all time. Wow. And it's translated into like 40 different languages. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. So he was a guy who sold Cutco knives. And I was not friends with him, but because I was in an inner circle in my area, I was on a conference call. This is actually pretty funny. So I was 19 years old, hop on this conference call. Hal Elrod's running the conference call. Cool. Figured he was just going to teach me how to sell more knives. He gets on. He's like, hey, I want to tell you guys about something I've been working on that's really changed my life, and it's my morning routine. And he goes, I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I hung up the phone. I was on the first ever call for the Miracle Morning, which is now an international like sensation. There's people all over the planet. Like, there's people like Tony Robbins who's talked about the Miracle Morning. It's crazy. But I was on the first ever conference call for that.
Click.
Yeah, click, hung up on it. Boom, see ya. I'm not waking up at 4 in the morning. I still don't wake up at 4 in the morning, except for to fly to Tampa. But the reality is, like, I've always put myself into positions where I ask the right questions, just like my podcast. I ask the right questions, which would get me on calls like that, which would put me in the right rooms with the right people, which would teach me the things I needed to do to level up to get to the next thing, right? And it wasn't always solid. I mean, there was definitely some faltering. Like, I don't ever want to paint the picture that it was like, I figured it out, I'm perfect, let's go. That's why I share the story of me going on a 3-month bender. Like, it's never perfect. I'm not the guy that you should look at and be like, I want to be just like him. I just want to be the catalyst for that conversation of how do I learn, how do I get better. And so when you look at my trajectory, it was always at least linked to 1 or 2 people that would get me into that room. So I'll give you a pretty good example. So when I was a kid, I'm a big visualizer, and I'm totally shifting. I'm taking over.
Do it.
So I'm a big visualizer, and so visualization has been a huge thing for me. It's really, really put me in the right places and allowed me to take the right action to get what I want. And so, do you remember the show Full House?
Of course.
Yeah. So everybody knows that show. And
John Stamos. I still have a poster of him in my room somewhere.
I don't doubt it. But one of the episodes, it was Stephanie's birthday, and there was this guy named Tommy Page who came and sang happy birthday to her. And Tommy Page is an early 90s pop singer. He had the #1 hit. Like, this, it wasn't a made-up character. He was actually just playing himself.
Yeah.
But I remember being a little kid, like 8 years old, watching this episode and being like, that would be so cool. And like, Uncle Jesse hung out with him. I remember going like, that'd be so cool to hang out with pop stars like Uncle Jesse and like being friends with them and all this other stuff. Fast forward to, and I remember that episode kept coming up. Like, I was like 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, and I'd be like, that would be so cool. Fast forward, I was about 24 years old. I was at a house party, and I looked up, and I went, holy crap, I'm in Tommy Page's house. Like, the same guy who my whole life I was like, that'd be so cool, that'd be so cool, that'd be so cool. And it sounds super woo-woo, like, oh my gosh, you visualized it and it happened. But the reality was I made a conscious decision to surround myself with people who were go-getters, who were chasing their dreams, who were trying to make something better of themselves. And I became best friends with the guy who got signed to Warner Brother Records, who was founded by Tommy Page.
Oh my gosh.
It was like this weird, like, thing, but it was about making the right choices, to back around to the first thing, to surround yourself with the right people that are in that mode of, I want to get better. But yeah, the active listening was something that was a catalyst, and I think when the first person reached out and said, because of you, I decided not to take my life, I didn't know how to react, and I read it and I didn't reply right away because I didn't know what to say or do, and right. It's such a big, it's a weight. It was a weight. It was a weight. It's not anymore. It's happened about 4 or 5 times now, and for me, it's about listening to them. They're giving me an opportunity to listen to them like I listen to my guests. before when people used to reach out and say, "Oh, thank you for this. This was great." I would try and like coach them up, try and coaching make it better. People don't want that, man. They don't want that. They want people to listen, and they want people to understand and hold space and just be a part of their journey with them. And if I have the right thing to say at the right moment, I'll say it. But it's not about trying to force something that's uncomfortable, And so, yes, I'm blessed and honored to be able to be that person who is there for somebody, whether that's remotely or whether that's whatever. They're just listening, and I'm sure there's other people who haven't reached out, who they've listened to my show and they just keep listening and they're trying to fight through it. I mean, I actually had a guy. I was a guest on somebody else's show. This is kind of a crazy story. I was a guest on somebody else's show, and we did the thing, and the host always says, "Hey, if this message from Justin has impacted you, email us. Here's our emails. Email us, tell us it impacted you." And this guy emailed us, and it was this really long email about how he's living in Vegas and he keeps getting caught up in the drug world, and he keeps selling drugs, and then he's like a strip club promoter versus trying to get clean and get out of there and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, "I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fix this. I just keep falling into it because I don't know how else to pay bills and whatever." And I'm like, holy crap. Like, I don't know what to say to this guy. But I do know if you surround yourself with the right people, good things happen. If you're surrounding yourself with the bad people, bad things happen. So all I said to him was, you need to get out of Vegas. I don't care what that looks like. I don't care how you're going to do it. Just get out of Vegas. Get away from those people and stay away from those people. That's the first step. When that happens, let me know. That was it. About a month ago, get an email from him. "I want to let you know that I'm living in Oklahoma City. I moved in with my aunt. I've been clean ever since the email you sent me. All these other things." And he's like, "I just want to thank you for doing what you do. I'm not expecting anything from you. I don't want anything from you. I just want to thank you." And it was like this, like, what? It was crazy. But that's the power of what we were talking about before. Like, who are you surrounding yourself with? It doesn't need to be on a high level. It can be on the lowest of levels. You know what I mean? Then that's taking you down.
That's right.
So just get out. Remove yourself. It's painful. It's hard. But just do it. But that's the power. I think that's the power in listening actively.